So we want to take this video and look at the first quiz and explain some of the answers from the Actus Reus quiz so that you'll get a sense not only of how to take these quizzes, how to think about multiple choice questions on the bar, but hopefully get a little deeper understanding of what we're talking about with these concepts of Actus Reus. So let me share the screen and we'll pull up the questions themselves and I'll walk you through them. So the first question, which of the following convictions is most likely to be reversed because the prosecution was unable to show the Actus Reus term? The answer here is a drunk driving conviction in which the defense introduced evidence that he was a sleepwalker and it was possible that he had sleep driven. There actually have been cases like this where people have introduced that sort of evidence. And there have been cases where people have claimed that they have shot or killed in their sleep. So how is it that sleep driving or sleepwalking or sleep shooting is something that doesn't involve the Actus Reus or doesn't involve Actus Reus? The idea is that the Actus Reus element of a crime is the doing of something that you choose to do. We don't care how or why you choose to move your hand from point A to point B, whether that's pulling a trigger, moving a knife, steering a wheel, but the physical action that's involved in a crime, Actus Reus says that you made that physical action voluntarily. In a conspiracy, the physical act may well be speaking or writing, but if you do that voluntarily, then you have satisfied the Actus Reus component of the crime. If your body was taken over, if you were hypnotized and forced to speak, then you would not have spoken voluntarily. If you were sleepwalking or sleep driving, you would not have been doing that voluntarily. So let's look at the other answers and we'll talk about why those are incorrect. So a drunk driving conviction in which the person drove drunk. Well, there your senses are not at their best, and that's why we prohibit drunk driving, but your senses have not been completely taken over by something else. Another wrong answer is B, a possession of a cocaine conviction in which the defendant introduced evidence of his addiction. Again, there is something that has influence over your body that causes you to have a lesser ability to resist, but it doesn't completely eliminate your ability to control your actions. And then finally, the same thing with the robbery conviction in which the defendant argued that his gang forced him to do this. Again, he had a choice. It was a hard choice. It might have been a choice that would have led to terrible consequences, but he nevertheless had a choice. When you are sleepwalking or sleep driving or have been hypnotized, you don't have choice. Your actions are no longer your own. They either come from your subconscious that has not been filtered, not to be too Freudian about it, but you have lost the ability of the ego or the superego, I always forget which one it is, to check the actions of the id, just to continue the Freudian stuff. There's no longer that filter. There's no longer your internal sleep process is telling you when to drive, when to shoot, when to stab. So the answer there is C. So let's then go to the second question. Which of the following, which term in the following statute is the Actus Reus term? And our choices are knowingly possesses, ounce of cocaine, or intent to distribute. Well, let's look at A and D first. A and D are both mens rea terms. Those are about the mind. You are aware that there is there are drugs in your pants, to look at the Gastello case. Intent to distribute, you desire to give them to someone else. Ounce of cocaine, that is simply the thing that you are possessing. The physical act, the act that you are engaged in is the possession. That's the Actus Reus. So question 3 was one that a lot of people missed. How would you best describe the ultimate rationale of the Gastello court in concluding that the defendant lacked the required mens rea? So we're talking about mens rea. I'm sorry, actus reus, not mens rea. So we're talking about actus reus. So that's not going to be any of the things from the last question. It's not going to be knowledge. It's not going to be intent. So if we're addressing the actus reus, it's got to be something other than the fact that he had the mens rea. We know he had the knowledge, and we know that the statute could not, in fact, be requiring anything more than knowledge. The statute couldn't require intent because it simply says he has to know he has the drugs. So both A and A is out because his intent is not actually relevant. Intent is not a requirement. What about D? Gastello did not know he was bringing drugs into the jail. That's certainly not the argument of the Gastello court. In fact, there's a really good argument. He absolutely knew he had the drugs because remember, he says, these aren't my pants. In the words of the Allman Brothers, I don't own the clothes I'm wearing. Why would you ever say that? Why would you ever say that except to try to say there's something in these pants I don't want you to see, and if you find them, it's not mine. So it's certainly not D because he did absolutely know he had the drugs. It's not C that he did not intend to bring the drugs into the jail because that would be adding more to the statute than is actually there. And it's not A because that's another mens rea term, intent to distribute. So why is B the right answer? B describes why the Gastello court says that there is no actus reus, because he didn't have a meaningful opportunity not to go into the jail without the drugs. So when he goes into the jail, he is walking into the jail physically with the drugs. But the Gastello court is saying he didn't have an opportunity to do otherwise. So therefore, the bringing of the drugs into the jail is not his physical act. It is something that's being imposed upon him because he didn't really have a choice not to do otherwise. The low court says exactly the opposite about mens rea, and that's question 4. How would you best describe the low court in concluding that the defendant did not commit or did commit the actus reus required? Okay, so the low court did not say that Lowe intended to distribute the drugs. Same reason. They can't change the mens rea term in the statute. Same with C, that he intended to distribute drugs. They're not saying that. They couldn't say that. The statute says that knowing is all that's required and that no other mens rea term is relevant to assessing knowledge. A lot of you put D, that he knew he was bringing drugs into the jail. That's true. He did know he was bringing drugs into the jail, and the Gastello and Low courts both would say that. But that doesn't answer the question of whether he committed the act, whether he was acting voluntarily when he brought them into the jail. So the Gastello court, the lower court, was absolutely saying he didn't have a choice. He didn't have a meaningful opportunity to do otherwise. The low court is saying exactly the opposite. It was an act because he did have an opportunity to do otherwise. So as he keeps going into jail with the drugs on him, having not said, wait a minute, I have meth on me, that was for the low court, the California Supreme Court, that was a voluntary act because he had the meaningful opportunity to do otherwise. Okay, let's go to question 5. The Gastello court said the California legislature did not intend to enhance the punishment for those who merely were caught with drugs and were brought into the jail and didn't confess to the crime. How could they have changed the wording of the statute if the California legislature really did mean not to punish the guy like Gastello or Lowe who got caught with drugs and just merely didn't disgorge them? That if this statute was meant only to capture people who are trying to smuggle drugs into jail, how would they have written the statute to make that more clear? And, we have three answers that are possible. A, add language forbidding bringing the drugs into the jail for the purpose of distribution. B, change the language of the statute to forbid intentionally bringing drugs into the jail. Or C, remove the word knowingly from the statute. And the answer is A or B, because if you either require the drugs to be brought in for the purpose of distribution, or if you require the prosecution to prove that the defendant actively desired bringing the drugs into the jail, either one of those would not capture the conduct that Gastello or Lowe engaged in. C is not the right answer because C actually makes this a strict liability crime. We don't care how it happened. Let's say that they found Gastello passed out in a ditch and they brought him into the jail rather than a hospital, and he had drugs on him. Under answer C, he would still be guilty because he wouldn't even know the drugs were on him as he came into the jail because he'd be passed out. But if we remove knowingly, if we make it a strict liability crime, that doesn't matter. So adding either A or B would add a requirement that would not apply to the conduct of either Gastello or Lowe, and would achieve the goal that the lower court thought the California legislature meant to achieve, which was punishing the intentional introduction of drugs into the jail. A really good argument can be made, since the statute didn't say that the California Supreme Court got it right. Neither court actually discusses that possibility. The fact that there was an easy legislative draft that would have achieved the goal that the defendant argues for, and that's not what's in the draft. The statute is ambiguous, but there was a very clear way to achieve the goal that would have achieved the result of the Gastello court that would have acquitted. It would have acquitted Gastello. So that's the first quiz. Hope this video is helpful, and good luck in the rest of the semester.